Don't give up. Yeah, be resilient. But I don't think the first year we made any money. Second year didn't really make any money. Any money that we were making, just reinvesting back
in the business.
I've certainly seen businesses where they've achieved a certain level and then suddenly the directors want new cars. Ultimately, business boils down to trust in many respects. Because I was so used to literally doing everything myself, well, I'll just do everything and you help me. And these days when I think about it, it's very much, but you can't teach good attitude and you can't teach commitment. That's the stuff that's kind of like intrinsic to somebody.
Exceptional marketing or exceptional service?
For me, what I'm looking for, particularly with office staff, is alignment. And what I mean by alignment is...
What's the number one thing in that early stage that you think every business owner should do to graduate from that early stage?
Crikey, I don't know. It's a really big question.
Hi guys, welcome to this brand new episode of this brand new podcast where I just sit down with other business owners who are perhaps at the same stage as mine or a few stages ahead of mine, and really I just sit down with them to get to know what they do and try to learn as much as possible from them. And I thought I would document this journey and share it with everyone because, I don't know, some people might find that useful. So yeah. Clive, if somebody just met you, how would you introduce yourself and what you do and your company?
Right, okay. So my name's Clive Cooper. I'm the owner and director of Leading Care Lancashire. We are I would say, mid-size healthcare company. We deliver a wide range of care services to a really diverse range of people who need help and support to get through lives. I would say that we position ourselves as a high quality provider of care, both to publicly funded and privately funded people.
Right. So when did you start that company and why?
Right. Okay. So the company's been going now for 10 years. I started back in 2016.
Okay.
At that point, I think my interest in delivering care in general grew over the years based upon my experience of bringing up a son with severe severe challenges. He was diagnosed with severe autism from a very early age. I think he was 2 at the time he got diagnosed. And since then, of course, both me and my wife had brought him up, and we'd been interacting a lot with social workers, with care companies for help with us, really, to help us and to get support for that. And based upon that experience, I met some fantastic carers. I met carers who were fantastic, albeit not particularly with autistic kids. And it kind of like just created the idea that, there's a real need out there for not just care in general, but really specific care. And I just came to the belief that, you need the right carers for the right kind of care to be delivered. So when our son went into full-time residential care, so he would have been about 16 at the time. And then you look at yourself and you go like, well, I'm in my 50s then. And you're like, well, if I'm going to do something with the rest of my life, I want to do something that I kind of believe in. So that was the starting point for saying, well, I think we can make a good job of delivering care. And I think I've got a really clear idea of what I want to do and what I want the outcome to be, but I didn't know the mechanisms to do it. Because of course I knew nothing about the regulations or anything like that. So the logical decision then really was to buy a franchise. And really that was our starting point, was because what a franchise gives you is effectively the roadmap or the toolbox, if you will. So it gives you that framework to build upon, and care itself is, quite rightly, it's really highly regulated. And you need that support to help you navigate the regulations in order to build a sustainable business. So we went down the franchise route, and then we did that for 10 years before we finally left the franchise. And then we became independent after that.
Right. That was one of my questions, really. If somebody's starting out, franchise can be really attractive. So,
Yeah.
franchise or having your own business starting from zero, which one do you think is?
Right. So, for me, franchising worked really well.
Okay.
There are dozens, if not more, dozens of particularly care franchises out there in the marketplace. And, you know, you can go down to these franchise shows in Birmingham or Manchester, and there are dozens of companies that will all offer you a very similar thing. So there are certain big names in the industry, like Home Instead, Right at Home, just to name a couple. But there are dozens out there, and I did meet most of them. They all offer you a similar kind of deal, which is, you know, you'll pay to understand our method, and then you will, you know, buy a territory, and you'll deliver that methodology into the territory, and then you'll build a sustainable business out of it. And at the time, you know, that's kind of like the shortcut. The alternative, of course, is to start from scratch. And a lot of people do that. I mean, you see a lot of new companies starting up with people who've been a registered manager at a company, or they've come from a nursing background, or they've come from perhaps a care background themselves, and then they just kind of grow into it by taking on their first clients, and you can grow that way. I would say for me, franchising, because you've got that framework, it allows a much quicker growth. Rather than starting organically.
Right.
The downside, of course, is that particularly when you get larger, franchises become incredibly expensive operations to be a part of. But yeah, so this pluses and minuses. You know, you've got to figure out what it is. If I could turn the clock back, I probably would still make the same decision.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Because, you know, like. Clearly, if I knew then what I'd know now, well, I'd just go and buy a company, you know, and, you know, build it up myself, kind of thing. But, you know, knowing then what I know, you know, knowing what I did at the time, I think it was the right decision.
Right. So, what were you doing before this business?
Right. Okay. So directly before starting this business, I worked for LCC. You know, I've been there for 5 or 6 years working as a surveyor. On looking after the LCC buildings like libraries and schools and things like that. So totally unrelated to care. But on the plus side, it did give me some insight into how public sector operates. You know, it's incredibly rule-based. It's incredibly process-driven. So that, you know, there was some insight into that.
Right.
Prior to that, I'd worked in abroad in different construction projects in different countries. So that was very diverse as well. So nothing directly related to care other than the experience of bringing up our son.
That was one of my questions, because if you're just starting out, should you start in something that you're already familiar with? For example, I'm already familiar in marketing and filming and stuff. So I started a business in that. Whereas you've never been a carer, but you started a care company, and I'm aware there are pluses and minuses on each side. For example, you tend to hire really fast if it's something that you're not familiar with. Whereas I'm struggling with that because I can't give away the thing that I'm familiar with and give it to somebody who's not as good. Yeah. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. Right. For me, my experience is that you've really got to be passionate about something. I don't care what it is, whether it's podcasts, whether it's, you know, okay, you've got to be passionate, and you've got to have a really clear idea of what you want to do. Because there are so many challenges on the way, and you've got to invest so much of your time and effort and money in order to create something. Unless you're really passionate about it and driven by it, then for me, you'll face a more uphill battle.
Yeah,
you know, I think a lot of people, particularly, like going back into care, you know, for me, I see different types of care businesses that operate. Some are very money driven. Mm-hmm. So, you know, I would like to frame myself as being very quality driven. But when you go back into asking yourself, like, what are you trying to achieve? I've never really been bothered about being the richest guy in care, but you do want to be the best, like that's always been the driving factor. And I've always had this like fundamental belief that if you focus on quality and you treat people well, work will and success will eventually find you, and that is what will drive you forward. I think if you're just purely profit driven, it tends to be much more of a short term thing, and you might be successful in the short term, but it becomes harder to sustain in the long term. True. Because all companies basically are groups of people that agree to work together in some form or another. And, if you're constantly trying to shortchange everybody and squeeze the last like ounce of blood out of them to get, where you want to be financially, it's always going to struggle in the long term. So it's, for me, it's got to be driven by a passion and a clear idea of where you're trying to get to, right, rather than, just focusing on something that you think is going to make you money. Because it's a constantly changing landscape. What makes money this year won't make money in 5 years' time.
Exactly,
and
yeah.
For me, I was always set out to be, right, I want to build a long-term sustainable business that, will succeed. And care for me fitted that bill. There's never going to be a shortage of ill people. There's always going to be a demand for care. So, and then when I started doing my due diligence and when I was planning the company and thinking about what I wanted to do, and I started ringing up homes and say, well, what problems are you facing with finding staff and what problems do you encounter? And a lot of it was, for me, was just really simple stuff to solve. I started up as an agency and we would supply staff into care homes. And before I even set the company up, I'd ring care homes up and say, well, what problems are you facing? And they'd be going, oh, staff don't turn up on time. They don't wear the uniforms. You don't get proper profiles. You don't get this. You don't get that. For me, I was like, well, that seems really easy to solve. And when we started up, that is all we did, was just get the basics right. So everybody was trained. Everybody turned up on time, and if they didn't, you get in your car and you pick them up and you make sure that they're, uniforms were just straightforward. Make sure everybody's uniform. So it was just driving quality, really. And that's pretty much all I had to do. And really, we've not looked back from that. It was just driving the quality. And because it's particularly in care, it's such a fractured industry. There were literally, I think in Lancashire, I saw a statistic on the NHS, there's something like 250 companies, for care companies, that supply into the NHS, just in Lancashire.
Just in Lancashire?
Yeah. And on the Lancashire framework, there's over 100 companies that supply care through Lancashire County Council. So what I'm saying is that there are a heck of a lot of small companies, that so to differentiate yourself, really, for me, it wasn't too difficult to do it because there were so many poor companies out. They can't all be brilliant, is what I'm saying. Yeah. So it's relatively easy to differentiate yourself because I felt there's a lot of poor companies out there.
So do you recommend people setting up companies in the care industry?
Well, it's whatever industry, that you feel you want to succeed in. For me, it was care because I felt I had some knowledge of it, having dealt with carers and having dealt with, that kind of sector. So for me, it was something I felt comfortable talking about. I felt I have some credibility in it because we've used carers ourselves and I could talk with some sense of purpose. Like, I mean, if you flip it around and say like, oh, tomorrow you're going to start a social media company, I have not got a Scooby-Doo about social media. Obviously I'm aware it exists and like everybody else, I've got TikTok on my phone. But I don't know anything about what makes it tick as an industry, So I would never think of trying that because I just can't even imagine how it works. So you've got to get something that resonates with you. So for me, something that you feel passionate about.
Or a problem that you've felt you've
or a problem that you can see a solution to.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's been around 10 to 11 years now. So it's a long journey. What would you say is the hardest part of the journey? Is it the beginning? Is it the middle? Or is it now? I'm aware it's like every stage is unique, but surely there is one that is the hardest.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose most companies go through growth points where, and you know, there are certain landmarks that you know, financial landmarks that you go through. Where I remember the first time we delivered 100 hours in a week, you know, then we did the first time we delivered 500 hours in a week, or you know, I mean, for the first year, I don't think we made any money. We started trading in the April, delivered my first shift in the May. End of the year, obviously, we'd increase turnover and that. But I don't think the first year we made any money. Second year didn't really make any money. And you've got to have that resilience, because what I did was any money that we were making, just reinvesting back
in the business. Yeah.
Back in the business. I mean, I was dead fortunate because my wife was working. So we had money coming into the house, and you know, she was on board with what we were trying to, what I was trying to do. I think if the problem often is if you're trying to take money out of the business too soon, because you need to constantly feed it in order to make it grow. I've certainly seen businesses where they've achieved a certain level, and then suddenly the directors want new cars, you know, and suddenly, you know, that it just places pressure on the business.
True.
You know, and then so I've always, with my company, I've always kept the debt really low. We took debt on to start the company, but the debt we focused on paying the debt off really soon. We didn't take any debt on in order to grow. We've just been funding. Yeah. So we made that decision not to take money out. I've never been one for fancy cars or anything like that. So again, you don't put pressure on the company, and then that allows you to reinvest in the right areas to continue growing
and grow a lot faster.
Yeah, I mean, grow a lot more stress-free. There's certainly, I know companies that have grown a heck of a lot faster than mine have, and I know other franchise owners. Back when I was a franchise, I met other franchise owners who were far more successful than me. You know, they were a lot more aggressive about it, and you know, I'm not quite sure what they were doing, but they were better at it than me. And you know, but we just kept plodding along and, you know, constantly reinvesting, and then you get to a certain point, then you can start paying yourself a little bit. And it just grows over time.
So you do think the first chapter is the hardest one?
Yeah, I think it is. It's getting that momentum. It's getting your name known. It's getting that reputation. I mean, after 10 years, you hope that, you know, we've got a good reputation in the marketplace. You build that reputation up amongst you know, your suppliers and your customers as well. And so you know, you're just focusing on developing that, and that can take time. Because of course, when you're the new kid on the block, nobody knows you, and it's very much face to face. You know, when I very first started, and I started with just, you know, a laptop and a phone, and then I pulled my suit on. You go out knocking on doors. You know, we were trying to supply into care homes. Right, I've got to meet the managers. I've got to explain, and I've got to meet them personally. I've got to explain why you should buy me,
right?
Why you should trust me, and ultimately, business boils down to trust in many respects. You know, you've got to trust the people that you're dealing with, that they're going to do what they say on the tin. And generally, it's what I found was it's relatively easy to get the first sniff. You know, to get that first kind of give me a go, and then after that you've got to justify why they should keep on using you, and then it starts getting into like, well, what are you going to charge me, and you know,
right.
You know, when are you going to be able to supply me and things like that. But those are just problems that you just solve along the way. So you know and then so it's relatively easy. So because when you start out, it's really low overhead. You know, if you're not paying yourself anything, the only money you need to make is what keeps the lights on, what pays the rent, what puts petrol in your car, and then that's as much as you need. So break even was relatively quick for us. I think we broke even within about 3 months.
Okay.
But then you can grow so much like that, but then of course you run out of fingers on your hands, hours in the day, because you're doing literally everything yourself. And then you've got to make that psychological break of bringing your first employee who's actually going to work in the office for you.
Yeah, that was one of my first questions.
Yeah.
When do you say, okay, I'm ready to hire my first employee? Is it a financial one? Is it a psychological one?
I think
or is it both?
Yeah, in hindsight, I was too slow. I think I spent the first 6 months. I made this decision when I first started, right, I'm going to literally do everything myself, understand the business inside out, and then by the time I bring somebody in, I know everything. And there's two problems with that. One is it's really slow. And I think we started in the May, brought the first employee in just before the end of the new year, around about December time, because we wanted to get the CQC registration.
Yeah,
so I brought a registered manager in so we could start the CQC process. And then so I brought the first employee in, but because I was so used to literally doing everything myself, you're kind of quite slow to set the expectations for the employees, really, which is, well, I'll just do everything and you help me. And it was that cycle. And again, if I could change anything, it'd be that attitude that I had towards staff, because I was still seeing myself as the center of everything. And then my attitude of bringing staff in was, you're there to help me do what I do incredibly well. And it's the absolute wrong way to think about it. And these days, when I think about it, it's very much, no, I hire professionals to do jobs within the organization. And my job is to get them to report to me on what they're doing. Right. So it's a totally different way of thinking about it. And then the other mistake I made at that time was hiring staff who weren't sufficiently competent in their job, because I hired them because we got on really well personally. Right. And you think, oh yeah, they're at a similar stage in their career. I feel I can help them. They can help me. We can, you think that, I don't know, I suppose the way to phrase it is you're trying to develop them in the hope that they're going to develop the company. But my experience is it doesn't really work like that.
Okay.
And also as well is trying to hire on the cheap was a mistake I made. So you'd hire somebody for below market rate in the recognition of the fact that they don't have much experience, but you're still paying a lot of money for people. Because they don't have that experience, they're not really able to contribute. And so you end up with that lag of they're still learning their role before they're able to feed back into it. Far smarter in hindsight to say, right, no, I'll pay market rate, but I'll get really good people with the expectation that they're going to grow and build and develop and help me, and do what I need them to do. Right. That's been a fundamental shift.
Right. So if somebody has the right skill but really bad attitude versus another employee who's got really good attitude but not the skills that you want, which one would you rather have?
Good attitude.
Good attitude.
Yeah, absolutely.
So even though you've just said that I really need somebody who's got the skills and experience, you would still take somebody who's not that experienced.
Well, no, I mean, the ideal, of course, is you get somebody who's really good at the job and the right attitude. But if it was 50-50, the attitude wins every day.
Really?
Yeah, because you can't teach that.
You can't.
Right, you can teach technical skills. You can teach somebody how to use a software system. You can teach somebody, if they're bright enough, you can teach them how to fill in forms and stuff like that. But you can't teach good attitude, and you can't teach commitment, and you can't teach professionalism. That's the stuff that's kind of like intrinsic to somebody. And it's interesting when I first used to recruit people and have conversations with them, and a lot of recruiting at that time was based on, tell me your technical skill, how would you solve this, that, and the other. Really, the questions I ask more about now are more kind of, if you're in this situation, how would you handle it? And what I'm really listening for is what their approach is to problem solving. Because you never have anybody with all the right answers, but you want somebody who's able to solve the problem themselves rather than look for somebody else to solve the problem for them.
Right.
So that's much more what I look for now. It's attitude towards how they approach issues rather than do they have the technical skill to know everything, because nobody does.
Nobody does. No.
Nobody does.
Right.
And again, as you get bigger in organization, and you've got more embedded experience, then you can take a bit more risk and bring somebody with not quite the right experience but the great attitude. You can bring them in and develop them. But going back to the first hires, you really need somebody who knows what they're doing and able to contribute to what you're trying to do.
Right. So specifically the first hire, they should really know what they're doing.
Yeah, I think so, because their job is to build your business.
Trey, yeah.
So you got to ask yourself, what do I need in order to build my business? What skills do I need? What attitudes do I need? That's what you're looking for.
So who was your first hire, and what department was it?
Yeah, I hired a registered manager, the first one. So the mistake I made was, so I hired her through. Now, we were part of the franchise at the time, and the franchise had a recruitment strategy, and which was basically they had a recruitment guy was in their head office. And I said, right, I'm in the market for a registered manager. Right, we're going to find you a registered manager. They recommended this lady she wasn't young. I mean, she was I would say late 20s, early 30s. She'd been in care a long time, and she'd been a deputy manager. And so she was ready to make that step up into being a registered manager. I, of course, was looking for my first registered manager, to break into the kind of CQC regulated environment and get away from just being agency. So in hindsight, what I could really have done with hiring with somebody who's got, 3 or 4 years under their belt, has the relationships with the commissioners, knows, how social care works and doing it. What I got instead was somebody who was finding out themselves about this. Now she was she was a very capable lady. She had all the paper qualifications.
Right.
She'd the right she'd done the accreditations, but she didn't have a business brain in her, and a business aptitude in her at all. And again, often with a lot of particularly in social care, you get a lot of managers who just wait for the phone to ring rather than go out and make the phone ring. And again, what you need is somebody who has that knowledge of how to make the phone ring, to go up and develop professional relationships, to go out and develop, to promote the company with the right people. And you need somebody who's capable of doing that for you. And, and because, I didn't have that. So that relationship lasted probably 6 months before it's kind of like, it's not working for me, that's just leading to frustrations. And it's so, and we weren't the right company for her, because I think what she needed was a company that had the capability of developing her. Right. Because she was still in the development phase of her career. It was me, and it was the blind leading the blind. I mean, I was brand new to care. She was brand new to management. It really was the blind leading the blind. So, so you kind of like, just, right, I need to think about this differently. I need a different kind of person in.
Okay.
And so we need to make the change.
Right. So you just said that the first chapter is the worst or the hardest one. So I really want to focus on that, because I don't know, something crazy like 80% don't even go through that stage, which is insane. So you've just mentioned the few mistakes that you've done, like hiring too late.
I've made loads of mistakes. I mean, seriously.
Sure, but the fact that you've passed that stage means you've done a lot of good things. So what's the number one thing in that early stage that you think every business owner should do to graduate from that early stage?
Crikey, I don't know. It's a really big question. I don't know. There were so many I wish I trusted myself more.
Right.
I think because we were part of a franchise, and because I didn't know anything about care moving into it, there is this kind of natural inclination to take everybody's word for it because everybody knows more than me, and particularly when you're starting out, everybody knows more than you. And I think for the longest time, you know, you 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 kind of doing the work, trusting that everybody's telling you the right thing to do. And what took me ages to realize was, well, not everybody is out working for themselves. The franchise is out working to develop the franchise. They're not working to develop my business particularly. So this kind of, different suppliers are coming, oh, you want to be doing this, you want to be doing that, you want to be doing the other. And it's that kind of like, I suppose, trustingness. I mean, this is very personal to me, but over time, what I found was just learn to trust yourself more.
Trust yourself.
This isn't work. It's not working for these reasons. I probably analyze things a lot more than I did back in those days, rather than just trusting that everything was working okay. Cash flow was an expensive lesson because again, what I didn't appreciate was how quickly things can grow and how soon you can run out of cash.
Yeah.
And if you're not really cautious, cash flow can absolutely trip you up. The first 3 years, 4 years, we nearly run out of cash twice. And then you suddenly got to either go at the banks. And I'll tell you this now, banks never want to talk to you. When you need money, banks don't want to know.
Really?
They do not want to know. They only want to talk to you. Banks want to talk to you when you don't need them. So right now we get offered, overdrafts and this, that, and the other, and do you want this, that, and the other? When at the times when I really need 20 grand, to make the payroll, I really need 20 grand. They don't want to know because you're a bad risk. Right. Because if you're at the point where, you need money just to make your next payroll, well, you're a bad risk and they don't want to know you. So,
wow.
so that's a really harsh lesson. So, yeah. I mean, you're digging out your own savings just to keep the company going. And that's when you really got a wake up call and I've really got to get on top of it.
Right. So in that sort of stage where it's really difficult, as you said in the beginning, really to get somewhere, you need, if you focus on having an exceptional product or exceptional service, everything follows. And from that, you're saying that brand is really everything. Having that quality is everything. But when you are in that sort of state where it's really difficult, it's really easy to just forget about quality and just forget
focus
about
on, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So how do you always maintain that brand, and how do you even build that brand? Practically speaking, we always say brand, but how do you build that brand? What is brand?
Right. Well, to be honest with you, that question wasn't one that I really had to answer until recently, because the brand was never mine. I started my company, but I was effectively, with the franchise, you're effectively renting the brand off somebody else, or you're paying a license fee for that brand, and somebody else owns that brand. Now, at the time, I didn't really get that concept. For me, it's like McDonald's, or it's like Subway sandwich, or I was well aware of franchising, but until you're actually working into it, you come to the realization, I might have a company, but I don't actually own any of the intellectual, the IP of the company. It's not mine. I am simply paying a license fee to rent that. So you're really relying on the franchise owner to develop that brand on your behalf. And ultimately, I think that's where a lot of franchises fall down, because certainly in our case, we felt in the beginning it was fine, but we felt over time, well, what am I paying all this money for? They're not really developing the brand. The model hasn't moved on.
Right.
And particularly because particularly in care, because it's such a regulated environment, and the regulations change, every year, and it's constantly moving regulatory target. The brand itself and the model it's operating has to change to adapt in order to keep it sustainable. So like I said, it wasn't something that I really was conscious about, because that was something all I had to focus on was growth and development of my company. The name was something that somebody else worried about. Since we left the franchise, that's when I become very focused on, right, this is our brand now. We own everything. We own the IP for it.
Yeah.
That's now the focus.
So what's changed now? How did you change anything in your service? And
Not really. I mean, the fundamentals of how we operate. The brand was just the wrapper that it sits in. The shame is that you spend years and years getting your name known, and getting that reputation for quality, and then you start from scratch again. And luckily in our case, we were able to retain all the client base. It was fine. It was just a new name change. But you're at that starting point of, let's get that name known, and then you're starting from zero just to get that name known.
It's hard, isn't it?
It's hard to develop that reputation. But like I said, I at the time I never appreciated it, and it's the downside of franchises.
Franchise.
You will simply never own the IP. And if you do decide to quit, franchises jealously guard their IP. Quite right too. I would if I was a franchise. They jealously guard it. They're very sensitive about what you can do. I remember having marketing ideas back when I started out, and we can put the brand on this, we can put the brand on that. I can get it. We can get it known, and no, they weren't interested. They control it themselves. Like I said, they control the message. They control what's going out. The downside is as brands get bigger, they become more generic. So, when McDonald's was 10 stores, it'll be very different when it's 100,000 stores.
True, yeah.
When I joined my franchise, it was, I want to say 30, and then rapidly it grew to about 90. But when you dilute, or when you expand so much, you become more generic in terms of, because from a franchise's point of view, they've got to pump out so much material. So back in when I started, they could maybe have marketing that was specific to Preston, or specific to Lancashire, or specific to your local area. When you've got 90, you can't do that. It becomes, it's dog day today and stuff like that to get your marketing out. Just generic stuff. But that's a franchise problem to solve, not really,
yours. Yeah.
not really mine.
Right. So I think we've already answered this, but we'll ask again. Exceptional marketing or exceptional service?
For me, exceptional service, because that's the core to the company.
Right.
Marketing is for me, it's the icing on the cake, because that's telling the message. But service is fundamentally what you're about. And for me, that's where everything starts from. If you don't have, for certainly my sector, services is the core of what we do. And if you don't have good service, how can you really boast about it? So the flip is if you had outstanding marketing, but your product was rubbish.
Yeah.
Right. For me, I can never understand how that would be sustainable. Whereas for me, sustainability means like our customers tend to stay with us because we have an exceptional service. So we don't have a high customer turnover. So the marketing is kind of like getting that message out there of why customers don't want to leave us. For me, the unsustainable becomes constantly marketing and saying we're brilliant, but you don't have the service to back it up, and so you got high customer turnover.
Churn, you mean?
Yeah, you've got that churn, that client churn. That for me becomes a much harder business to operate than focus on quality, focus on service, and then marketing just becomes the shouting about it. Certainly, in my mind, that's the way it works. I don't know if
I agree. Like we rarely ever lose a client. The average client has stayed from the beginning. So just focusing on quality, I think.
Yeah.
And that's one of the issues that I see when somebody comes in to do some marketing services with us. I'm like, you don't really offer an exceptional service. So no matter how much I try to put the icing on the cake, if the cake is rubbish,
Well,
there's nothing.
Exactly. Marketing for me is a wrapper. It's like a candy wrapper. And it's making it look nice. But fundamentally, it's like if you're a garage or, if you're rubbish at fixing cars, sooner or later your reputation gets out that you're rubbish at fixing cars, no matter how much you boast about it.
Yeah.
You're rubbish at fixing cars. It's like a restaurant. If you're selling rubbish food and it don't taste good, fundamentally you can sing and dance all you want about it, but it becomes unsustainable. I don't see any business as being any different, really.
Yeah. Right. So going back to the hiring issue. So you've hired plenty of staff. I'm not sure if it's 100 or a bit more than that. What's your number one tip? No matter what department it is, what is your number one tip to finding the right employee?
Okay, right, these days, I don't know if this is a tip, but I can tell you what our approach is. I used to hire on technical skill. I don't anymore. I hire on values. So we are values-based recruitment as a company.
Okay.
That's and what you're trying to get at is does somebody fundamentally have the aptitude for care? And are they of the right make? Because not everybody is capable of being a good carer. It takes a certain type of person to want to work in that sector because it's not particularly well paid. It's it's a challenging, it's emotionally draining, and it's it's physically tiring. So you've got to want to do it. So that's something we've focused on a lot with office staff. What I'm looking for, particularly with office staff, is alignment. And what I mean by alignment is what I'm looking for is where they're trying to get to within their careers. So with office staff, with the people that help us really manage the company, I'm trying to get a handle on how can I make the company work for you. So to give an example, like with registered managers, you can hire a registered manager, but really what I'm looking for is where do they want to go within their career? Okay, because if they're saying, oh, like I'm a registered manager now, but me ambition is in this particular flavor of registered manager, and that's the direction I'm going in, then you're saying like, right, can I help you on that journey? Because I want you to succeed and I want you to feel that the company's helping you succeed. So it works for both of us. Like it's got to work for the company and it's got to work for you. That's how we'll get this like shared goal of driving forward. Because what I'm looking for is to move the company forward and to progress it in quality and in size. They've got to want to do that for me. And it, pay is almost irrelevant. The pay rate is the pay rate. But what keeps you coming in day out is the sense that you're achieving something in your life.
True.
So if I can identify that, and if I think, I can give you that, and it's user professional development, and I can give you that professional development that you feel, I've got a future here, and a reason for me, and I don't come here just to pay my bills. I'm here because I'm on this professional journey. Then that's really what I'm trying to identify. Yeah, it's about alignment,
right?
It took me years to learn that because I used to think you're here because I'm paying you, and that's true. I mean, obviously, if I don't pay people, nobody turn up. That's true, but it's only half the equation. Because look, work's work. You got to get out of bed at 8 o'clock every morning. You got to be in at 9. You got to work, true. And care is a challenging sector. It takes more than money.
True.
You've got to want to do it. You've got to feel that you're winning.
Right. The only issue is, even when you find that alignment, you sort of become a teacher and a leader as well. So especially when you're hiring your first employee, it's chaotic. There's too much work to do.
Yeah.
And you're already busy. You're a busy
Yeah.
operator, and now you're becoming also a teacher and a leader, which is a completely different skill. So, what's your number one tip for being a leader? For
Transparency. Transparency, honesty, being it so people can understand you. So again, when I was bringing people on board, and they say, pouring over resumes and this, that, and the other, and I changed a couple of years back. I just started changing the way when I met people for the first time. I would talk about, right, here's the company background. Here's where the company is at the moment. Here's the problem I'm trying to solve. I've looked at your resume. This is where I think you can help me solve it. What is it and then you talk about the problems in the future. So you change the conversation, not so much about, because most interviews are about tell me about yourself. And, it's almost like they've got to sell themselves to you. And absolutely, that's what I used to do. Is that people used to interview me. I'm kind of like beyond that now, where I just say, look, I kind of accept that you wouldn't be here if I didn't think your resume was good enough, So here's the problem I'm trying to solve. This is where I want us to be in the next 2 years. It's what I want to be in the next 3 years. Where do you want to be? Because this is the problem I'm trying to solve. This is where I'm trying to achieve. How are you going to help me do that? So it's kind of like, for me, it's a more honest way to talk about the company, talk about the objectives of the company and where I'm trying to get them to. And what do you think you can bring to help me do that? And then this is our thing. And then, this, of course, this is how I can help you in return. Of course, I can pay you whatever. But, it's got to work for you too. So then the second conversation is like, what is it you're looking for? Right. So that so you feel that you're moving forward in life. And with a lot of people, well, they just want to, come and do my job and go home again, that kind of thing. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. It's not to say that, you've got to be some career-minded, go-getter. There's absolutely a role for that. But again, as you grow as a structure, as you grow an organization, you start with 1 people, then you've got 2, then you've got 5, then you've got, greater numbers. What you'll find is it's almost like a stratification, and people who want to get ahead as you grow. And again, I try and be as honest as I can with people and say, look, this is where I want us to be. This is the structure I'm expecting to see. In order for us to move to that point, this is what I would want to see in you. And a lot of it is about ownership, and it's about taking on board and being proactive and, not just sitting back and waiting to be told what to do. It's owning it, telling me what we should be doing. That's so it's setting, for me, transparency and setting expectations right from the get-go around this is what we're all here to do. You're part of a team. This is what the whole team's working towards. This is the part that we all want you to play. We think you'll be good at it. Tell us why you think you'll be good at it, about it, and how you'd go about doing it.
Right. Well, even then, I think it's hard to expect somebody to be perfect straight from the beginning. Sure. And you've got to do a little bit of, I don't know if you want to call it training or teaching. Sure. Or correcting.
Induction.
Induction.
I mean, whatever.
And that is a big part in the care industry, because often some people just come in, have no clue what the industry is about. So what's your number one tip for training your employees to be at the standards of what you want?
We start with ethos. So we made a point of, I decided really early on that from the minute somebody walked through the door, for the first time we ever met them, they would understand what we stood for as a company. So if you track, and we can talk care staff here, but if you track, the first interactions that they've got with us, it might be online, it might be on the phone, it might be just walking through the door. They've got to get a sense of, this is what the company stands for. as an organization, because this is sets it what their expectation is of us. So if you play out two scenarios, like, so say you've got somebody who walks through the door. I mean, I know examples of care staff that have walked through a door. They've been interviewed, they've been given a uniform, and they've been working the same day. I mean, shocking as it is, that I know that's happened. And so if the company itself doesn't take the job seriously, how would you as an employee take the job seriously? Because nobody's taking it seriously, and you're just going to get rubbish outcomes because of that. So for me, it's kind of like just setting the expectation right up front. We do take it seriously. We make a point of saying we're not easy to join. We make a point of saying we set really high professional standards. So it's almost like, here's the rules of the game. You know, we will absolutely support you. We will absolutely invest in you to develop you. But in return, these are what our expectations are, and then these are what we expect. So for me, it's that consistency, it's that transparency, it's really a really honest way to employ people. And I think, again, if you can do what you say you do on the tin, then that people will stay with you.
Yeah.
And our turnover rate in staff is really low. I mean, compared to the industry, for sure. And I think that's because I don't think we do anything differently than other companies are doing. There's no secret sauce, but we're honest, we're clear, we're transparent. We try and invest and develop people. We like to see progression within the organization so that people can start at the bottom, but upskill and develop and be given a chance. Doesn't always work out, but at least to get a chance to say work in the office from working in the field. Not everybody's able to do it, but I feel like if we're giving everybody a fair shake, that's as much as we can do.
Yeah.
And I think, again, over time, you'll develop that internal reputation of they're a fair company. I mean, interestingly, we do obviously spend money on hiring now, but after you get to a certain size, a lot of growth now just comes from word of mouth.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh. Even carers?
Yeah, absolutely. Oh. Yeah. I would say most of our recruitment comes from other carers saying, "Oh, you should come here," and
wow.
For me, that's really powerful.
It is?
Yeah.
Okay. So, well, I'm aware that as a business owner, your job really is to fire yourself slowly over time.
Yeah.
From all departments as you grow and employ more people. But I find that really hard. So what's your number one tip to fire yourself from all the department of your business slowly and trusting that your employees will have the same standards as you do? Or is that unrealistic?
I think that's unrealistic. Well, right. So my experience was, in the beginning, literally working 7 days a week, literally never switching off. And I think I did that I didn't take any time off for 2 years, every weekend. I mean, even if I wasn't in the office, but you still got the laptop open. I was on call for probably the first 2 years. Or I had my share of on call for the first 2 years. So you've got that, and then you've got to set rules. And again, this is probably, I would do something much earlier than what I did. I think I was still heavily involved on the shop floor for probably the first 5 years. So if there was ever a problem, I'd be on the shop floor trying to resolve it. And that was a mistake, because you set the expectation with staff that you're the ultimate problem solver, and you're taking that responsibility on your shoulders and away from those people. And I remember I had a consultant come in and speak to me, and he was, we were just talking about, what you're doing during the week and, how your day works out and whatever. And he was just like, why are you paying this person to manage the service, but you're actually managing it for them? And it was absolutely true. And you come to this realization that, as the guy at the top, The only time anybody ever knocks on your door, basically, is to give you a problem to solve. Nobody comes up for a chat. It's just, yeah, here's a problem that needs to be solved. Okay, and for the longest time, you're like, right, let's get on it. Let's solve that problem. And then again, up until relatively recently, then you turn around and you say, like, right, how are you going to solve it for me? And it's that psychological shift of saying, right, expectation. You're managing that service. How are you going to solve that for
You're
me?
the problem solver, not
You're
me.
the problem. I'm paying you to solve problems. And it's that psychological separation of I'm paying you to solve problems for me. Everybody has problems every day of the week. I'm paying you to solve them. I'm not paying you to come in. You can come in. We can talk about the problem, and we can gameplay various. Like, we could do this, we can do that, we can do the other. But ultimately, you paid to solve the problems for me. Why am I taking that responsibility on?
If somebody has just set up a business and they are in the first year and they want to take weekends off and couple holidays a year, what do you say to them?
Great if you can do it. I mean, every business is different. Great if you can do it. I think particularly with care, because care is a 24/7, 365 business, very difficult. I think if you're running a shop, very acceptable to do it. Okay. It is very much dependent on the business, but the way care operates, the care itself never stops turning. But I didn't take any time off the first couple of years. Yeah. And then I think I had a week off in year 3, and then just gradually gave myself a bit more time off.
Well, that's the answer I was looking for, because that's more realistic. Especially when you're young, you don't know anything.
Yeah.
And you're trying to take weekends off and trying to take holidays.
But it's the first part of kind of distancing yourself from the service. So a lot of it boils down to trust, because you've got to trust somebody that, and because I'm a bit of a control freak, and because I'm a bit of a, OCD and all that, and I want to be in charge of everything. I'm not sure that's a good trait, by the way. That the strengths and weaknesses to that. And one of the weaknesses is that you've got to let go, and you've got to trust people. And the first step is, I remember the first time I didn't do on call. You're like, right, the phone's not ringing, and I've got can watch a film without jumping every time the phone goes out. It's for me, it was baby steps. Other people manage that process a heck of a lot better, and
true.
And for me, that's probably one of the reasons why some businesses expand really quickly, is because they're able to trust and develop staff more, certainly much quicker than I've been able to do it.
Yeah, it's not an easy skill, especially when
not.
you have got really high standards, and then the person doesn't have, your team doesn't have the same standards as you.
Yeah, but then you're in that kind of scenario of, you might have one issue, and then judging that person on one issue.
True, yeah.
Well, one thing I've had to learn to do is just accept that people make mistakes. People will make mistakes. People are human. Nobody's got the same view of the business that I've got, because I bloody own it. So you don't expect that. You're expecting to have professional commitment, because that's what they're being paid to do. But I could never realistically expect somebody to have the same outlook as I've got. But the outlook that they've got is perfectly fine. It's much more, like I said, it comes down to alignment. Do they want the same things that I want for the business? If they do, then you got to trust them to get on with it and provide them support to let them do the job.
So how do you actually become a good leader?
Crikey, I don't know if I even am, to be honest with you. My take on it is, have a solid vision of where you're going, be able to communicate that vision so that everybody understands where you're going. And if everybody understands it and you know what you're doing, then support them to do the job that you want them to do in order to get you there.
Excellent answer, yeah.
That's sorry, the only answer I've got. I don't,
No, I think it's excellent, yeah.
Yeah.
You're right. So as a business owner, what's your biggest waste of time?
Yeah, I think one of the mistakes I've made over the years is trying to do everything myself or within the company. Um, trying to have, I've hired people for jobs that wasn't really a full-time job. So I mean, I've hired marketing people. We weren't big enough to actually require a marketing person. So it's kind of like you're trying to solve a problem that doesn't exist.
Oh, okay.
And you're kind of like going, well, if we were a company that was 3 times the size, all right, that's a problem that exists and I need somebody to hire that. But we're not there yet. So you don't, I don't need that person. I need to bring on a professional partner who I trust and buy part of their time to solve the problem
No, I
that
see
I've
what you
got.
mean.
So I think that kind of, focusing on core operation and what you need to do. So
Right.
is that answering the
Yeah,
question?
yeah. I get what you mean.
Yeah.
Agree or disagree? A business is not really it's not really about having a good idea.
Agree.
Agree.
Yeah. There's nothing new in the world. Like, there's nothing unique. Everything we ever think about, somebody's already thought about it.
Right.
I think it's about seeing an opportunity to do something better or do something different.
Okay.
Mm.
Do you believe in side hustles?
Yeah, I do. I stages in careers. I mean, I don't really do many side hustles. I mean, I have in the past. I used to work, before I did this, I used to work 2 jobs. I used to have one job Monday to Friday, another job on the weekend. I had 2 kids to bring up and, whatever. So, yeah, hardest thing when you're starting out is making money.
Okay.
Getting your, I've come from a working class background, so you need to work hard to get some cash behind you before you can start investing in yourself.
Right. But then at your stage now, do you think you should have side hustles or multiple sources of income, or is that spreading your focus?
It's for me, no, because it's been to be honest with you, it's been so all consuming, and you kind of like put in, on the roulette wheel of life, you put in all your chips onto that number,
Yeah.
and saying, right, I really want to make that work, and you've got to do it. And for me, anything that was diverting me focus away from what I was trying to build, and that was my future.
Right.
I think but other people would wholeheartedly disagree with me, and loads of other businessmen have, they've gone from one business into property into another business, and they're a very different kind of businessman than I am, because they're portfolio businessmen. That's very different from me, and very hugely successful as a result of it. I followed this guy on James Sinclair. His podcast I find is really interesting, and he started out as a kids' party entertainer, and he's just got a massive portfolio of different companies now. Entertainment, he's into property, he's ice cream businesses, theme parks, really diverse.
He manages all of them.
Well, he's the owner.
He's the owner. Okay.
Right. So, and is the owner, and I would say he's migrated from being, hands on himself to being owner, to being an investor.
Yeah, so that's sort of different. That's investor sort of thing rather than actually operating multiple businesses. What I was asking is actually doing multiple things at once. So
yeah, but I think it's a good thing if you're capable of doing it. I don't think I'm particularly good at doing that. But hugely successful business people are the ones that are able to. I knew a KP franchise owner from back in the day, and he had left the franchise several years before me, and I spoke to him, and he's gone from having one business to now he's got, I think, about 8 businesses across the country, right from Scotland right down to the south coast where he is. And Now, he can't actively, how much involvement can you have day to day if you've got 8 businesses geographically separated? You can't. You're relying everything on your staff to manage that operation for you. I've known other franchise owners who've gone from one franchise and they now own 18. And as an owner, your job wholly changes because you're not focused on any one business day to day. You just might step in if they've got an issue, but fundamentally your role is hiring the right people, checking the cash flow, making sure the numbers work,
and then that's it.
So when you say side hustle, it's really just bringing in another business, isn't it?
Right. Yeah. No, I know what you mean. Yeah. Right. So how do you know that you're ready to open your second location as a business?
So we opened the second location, well, because we got the first one up and running, really. And that one was going okay. So you're like, repeat the same again, do the same again. And that's what we did. And pretty much that's how it's worked. But I think it's have you got the financial capacity to do it? Have you got the right, can you see the business reason for doing it? If the business case is there, it's there.
So is there a specific profit percentage? Is there anything that you look for?
There probably is. But with me, it was very much just gut feel.
Gut feel, okay.
Yeah. I mean, care is a funny one because the care requirement is everywhere. There's nowhere in the country that doesn't need care. The question is very much, what's the competition? Can I see a space for myself there? And my sense when we opened up the second location was, I think we can make a difference because I think we're doing something different or higher quality than what other people are doing. So I think we'll be able to become established.
Right.
And then, if you've got that long-term belief, then it just becomes like, right, what do we need to do in order to develop it?
Finish the sentence. If you're going to start a business, you have to know that.
Yeah, it's a long path.
It's a long path.
Yeah, it takes more time. It takes twice as long and costs twice as much as what you think it's going to do. Yeah, it takes a lot more money and it takes a lot longer than anybody will ever tell you. I'm always really questioning of overnight success because usually overnight success is on the back of a lot of hard work that's gone on. Underneath it all might get presented as overnight success because I think overnight success is pretty rare. And in business generally, my experience certainly has been, unless you got some like unique product that nobody else has got and it just mushrooms. But most businesses are variations on what's always been there, and it's just some company trying to do it better or do it quicker. So it generally just takes time. So generally takes more time and more money than you think it does.
Fair enough. Okay. So last question. What's the best piece of advice, business advice that you've ever had?
Don't give up. Yeah, be resilient. Yeah, I think that's why a lot of businesses fail. Like you mentioned earlier, like 80% fail within 10 years, I think it is. However, the ones that keep going are the ones that I think just are resilient, able to keep going because there's so many ups and downs over the years with challenges and fallings out, cash isn't where it should be, people aren't paying me, and it just becomes one problem after another. You've just got to keep going for it, and but if you can keep going, you just become a bit better, don't you?
Yeah, you do. Well, Clive, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Really interesting. Thank you very much for the insight.
Looking forward to have another one, maybe.
Well, I don't know. We'll see how we get on. See how we get on with this one.